What do we do, Florencio? The honor captain hung his head in his seat. My first year with this great honor, and my reputation will forever be tarnished, blemished. You perhaps are making a mountain out of a molehill? The challenge runners came back safe. There was no long-term damage here. It will be a story people speak of without doubt, but it could do nothing to hurt the storied service of the great Captain Varela of Histara's Cove. Varela spun around in his chair, slicking back his white hair between his horns. His face was spun into a twisted mix of a forced anger and a smile that couldn't help but slip through. I suppose you are onto something, Florencio, but only time will tell now. I will submit my report and recommend that Drinhackle and Hathmorn deal with them. I imagine they will have a worse time dealing with it all that way. Varela walked to the cabinet and pulled out a bottle of scotch and 2 glasses. What of the challengers? Did you see that they could go and find some answers about these crystals? I did. I sent them to Astagash. I figure if anyone would know something, he would. And they left. You know of it, for sure? I confirmed they left and had directions. I told you they were serious about them. A Histara's Cover always admits when they're wrong, Florencio. And you were right. This time, anyway. Varela smirked as he downed a full glass. A colorful bunch, you have to admit. I liked them, Florencio stared northward out of the tower, far off in a distance in a line that would eventually cut towards the hills north of Yernden. I really like how they so easily saw through your bullshit. That is an excerpt from a story that I wrote for my players, and that is the theme of this week's video, writing cool short stories for your players in between levels. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin. This is the Storycraft Society, and I'm coming back at you with another narrative-based DM tip. This is one of those things that I am so glad that I figured it out, and actually, the first thing that I'm going to say is this is actually a tip of the cap to Matt Koval. In one video, he talked about how he would write short stories for his players so that they could see what was going on behind the scenes, and I just absolutely love this idea. And in this video, I'm going to explain how I took that concept, how I ran with it, how I expanded it into something that works really well for my game, and hopefully it's something that you can use in yours. So let's get started. So first things first, let me explain to you what this concept is. What I have started doing is every single time that my players level up, I write a short story and give it to them to show them something that is going on in the world that is not centered around their characters. The main reason that I fell in love with this concept is because if you watch a movie, a TV show, or read a novel, you don't always see what's going on with the main characters. And in a D&D game, your main characters are your players. Well, you don't want to take table time away from your players to pause the game to then just expel narrative at them. There's no good that will come from that, at least not in the experience that I've had as a DM. So what I have found is so magical about this is if I write them a short story at every level up, not only is it a cool little added bonus that when they level up, they get to see more of what's going on behind the scenes, but also it allows me to show off other parts of NPCs and bad guys that the characters wouldn't normally get to see. I'm going to show you some examples. One of the first ones that I wrote was this piece called The Two Captains, which was showing the personal relationship between 2 captains that were at a festival that my players were at. One of the captains was like the good cop, and one of them was like the bad cop. And when they left that particular role-playing encounter, they just all hated the bad cop. They just thought that he was the absolute worst, and that was the side of himself that he was showing in that moment. But what I wanted was to give some context and add some depth to the character, so that's why I provided them with this particular short story. And I think that it did just that, because when my players came in the next week after getting to read this, so many of them were like, oh man, I didn't realize all this about Captain Alvim. And I, of course, smiled and said, yep, it's not always the thing that you get on first experience. Don't always judge a book by its cover. The next one that I did for them was Astagash Does Hathmorn. Hathmorn is like my wizarding school, kind of like Hogwarts, and Astagash is a retired alchemy professor from there, and he kind of lied to the players a little bit, taking information that they had and then took that back to Hathmorn to try and use those resources to forward Hathmorn's agenda. That's something that would have happened totally off camera, that the players would have never seen, and it might have blindsided them later, the way that it would blindside their characters. However, if you were watching a movie or a TV show, the audience would get to also experience that stuff that was going on behind the scenes. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation where your players are both your audience and your characters. So when I started sharing this idea with my other DMing friends, they all came back with basically the exact same answer. How are you going to trust your players not to metagame with the knowledge that you gave them from behind the screen? And this, I think, is the magic of this concept. And it's the thing that I, as a dungeon master, am the most excited about with it. I want them to metagame with this information. I am giving them this information so that their characters will then make decisions that will lead to more dramatic and narrative enriching results. It's one of those things where you can do both. You can provide the players with metagamey style information that will then encourage their behavior to do things that will be dramatic and interesting later. If it's just metagaming information for metagaming information's sake, then I think that that's no fun, and definitely it starts to peel away at the juice of the game. But in the example of the two captains, they now have a metagame knowledge, something that is above what their characters would know, that Captain Alvim is a nicer guy than what he led on. So maybe then that leads their characters to like him a little more the next time they see him. When he extends maybe just a small gesture of kindness, had the players not seen what was going on behind the scenes, they might reject that little gesture of kindness because they just saw this guy as nothing but a jerk. With this information, now their characters might be more readily accepting of a small gesture of kindness, knowing what he is capable of, that maybe their characters wouldn't know, but they would, which could lead to more enriched story. Same thing with Astagash going to Hathmorn. The characters don't know that they have been betrayed by Astagash and that he's now taking their discovery back to the wizarding school to see what can be done with it. But that doesn't mean that the players don't get to know that, and now maybe they're going to be a little bit more selective about what information they let slip in that direction. I, as a DM, do not want Astagash and Hathmorn to win. I want my players to win. So by giving them that little bit of information, maybe from a metagame perspective, they do just a little bit more to try and hide themselves. It ends up protecting them in the long run. And again, it's the type of thing where writers in a writing room who are writing a TV show or a movie, they're going to be doing that sort of thing and having that conversation. Just because we play this story-based game in real time doesn't mean that we shouldn't have some knowledge to help us to tell a better narrative or a more dramatic story. The last one that I'm going to talk about is you can give context to things that the players get in a very, very positive way, as well as allude towards things that will be coming in the future with this sort of thing. So I wrote another one for my players called A Gift from the Past. This is the last one of them that I'm going to share with you. This was given to them right after they leveled up after acquiring an old ruined wizard's tower that they're now kind of taking over and turning into their base. This story, A Gift from the Past, is a flashback to the time of the previous owner when this place was in its opulence, when it was well lived in and well taken care of. 2, it gives them context on the keep and the ruin that they found. And 3, I also used the story to allude to things, to foreshadow to things that will be coming later in the story that maybe even the players don't know is coming yet, but it certainly will. And to me, I think that that is the narrative juice behind this idea that you can use meta knowledge and meta information to inform your players in a narrative way that just makes the game feel so much more cinematic and so much more, good storyingness did. But that's all I've got for this week. This definitely was kind of a quick tip, but hopefully it's one that you will be able to take to your games and use in a way that you find really exciting and works well for your group. I think the really cool thing about it is that I took this idea from Matt Koval and I started to use it in the way that I found most effective. And I encourage anytime you see a DM tip like this, find a way that it works for you and your group to enrich your gaming experience, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all chasing, a better and more fun gaming experience. What do you think of this tip? Is this something that you're going to try to add to your game and use? Leave that down in the comments below what you think. Right now, I'm definitely going to throw a screenshot of each of these stories up onto the screen. That way, if you are interested and you'd like to read them just to get ideas or to use in your game somehow, I don't know exactly how that would work, but if you are even remotely interested in this, definitely take a look and let me know what you think down in the comments below. I really, really enjoy getting to write like this. I think it's a lot of fun. So, yeah, I love getting to share it with you all as well. But that's all I've got. Do all the YouTube stuff, subscribe, like, share this video with a friend that you think would enjoy it. Players, you can use this stuff too. That's just as a quick side note. You can write cool little awesome short stories about what's happening with your character off screen as well. I think that's actually really, really useful to a game, and you could give it out to the other players to show off what's going on with your character as well. Give it to your GM. I think that can super help to make a game more narratively enriched. But that's all I've got for this week. So until next week, I'll be seeing you.